We, we often measure our relationship readiness by external factors, the degrees, the career, the dream house. Even though these things are great to have, it's usually the internal things that really determine if we are truly ready for a happy and healthy relationship. Are we healed from past hurt? Have we strengthened ourselves spiritually? Do we know who we are as a person? Do we have a mutuality mindset? Ready for a Relationship, the self-growth guide to internal readiness, addresses all of these questions. For more information, go to www.readyforrelationship.com.
Hello, welcome. Come on in. Welcome to Ready for Relationship Live. I'm going to give it a few minutes. Say hi, say what's up, so I can make sure that I can see everyone and that everyone can see me. I'll give it about 1 or 2 minutes before we get started. I can make sure that all these. Okay. Hey, Charlie. Thanks. I'm gonna make sure that my privacy settings are good before we get started. Come on in. We'll give it a few minutes for people to jump on. Let's see. It's another episode of Ready for Relationship Live. Of course, happy Resurrection Sunday. Gonna give it a few minutes for those. Just a few minutes. Make sure everything is straight here. Make sure my settings are good. All right, just say give a thumbs up, a heart. What's up? I want to make sure I can see your comments and make sure you can hear me. See if I have to adjust my settings. Okay, I'm sure I did. All right. I think everyone can see me. So we're going. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna run the commercial one more time.
We often measure our relationship readiness by external factors, the degrees, the career, the dream house. Even though these things are great to have, it's usually the internal things that really determine if we are truly ready for a happy and healthy relationship. Are we healed from past hurt? Have we strengthened ourselves spiritually? Do we know who we are as a person? Do we have a mutuality mindset? Ready for a Relationship, the self-growth guide to internal readiness, addresses all of these questions. For more information, go to www.readyforrelationship.com.
Good evening, good afternoon. Hello, wherever part of the world you might be watching. Welcome to another broadcast, another episode of Ready for Relationship Live. And happy Resurrection Sunday to everyone out there that's watching. As you know, I'm your host, A.B. Bracewell, and this is Ready for Relationship. As I tell you every Sunday we come on, that this whole broadcast is meant to talk about the importance of preparing for a happy and healthy relationship. We speak about so many vital things that go into properly being prepared to be in a healthy relationship. If you've been a follower in the broadcast, we've done shows on healing from abandonment issues. We've done changing our paradigm. We've done shows on taking ownership. We've done shows on knowing ourselves, identifying things like triggers and things like red flags. We've done so many different topics, so many different shows. And I thank you and I welcome all those that continue to come and support. I appreciate you. And tonight is no different. Tonight we're going to be speaking about communication repair. You know, I will say some of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to communication is the idea or the thought that communication is actually taking place. A lot of the time when we're talking, we believe we're communicating, but that's not all necessarily the case. Communication takes more than just talking. It takes listening, it takes understanding, it takes processing, it takes a lot of things. And it's always been very ironic or very funny to me that the word silent and the word listen are spelled with the same exact letters. A lot of the times when we think that we're listening just because we're being silent, that's not the case. A lot of the times when we're being silent, when we're talking to a loved one, when we're talking to someone that we're in a relationship, we're being silent because we're thinking of a rebuttal, or you might be silent because we've totally checked out of the conversation, or we've been silent because we've put up a wall. And that's just one of the many things about communication that we're going to talk about tonight. Before I even introduce my guests, because I never come on here alone. I never want to just give my perspective. I always have some great guests with me, so they can lend their perspective, their thoughts, and their ideas. And before we even do that, please, I want to see who's all watching tonight. I see we got a couple of people on. I see Jade is on, Shahid is on. I see Charlie's on. Please just give us a wave, say hello, let us know how you're feeling before we jump into the conversation of communication repair. Figuring out how to build positive communication before we get into a relationship, and actually when we're in a relationship. Lisa, how you doing, Lisa? Thank you for joining. So tonight, I have two very, very special guests. One of the young ladies, she is founder of Emerge Trauma. Emerge Trauma is the name of the foundation. She's the founder of Emerge Trauma. She works as a medical coding. She works in medical coding. She's a writer. She's a singer. She's a lover of traveling and reading. And her philosophy for relationships is she believed that relationships work well when we choose to understand one another. And I can't agree any more with that. When we choose to understand each other, that takes a lot. That's Tanya. And the other guest, our other special guest, name is Taisha. Taisha is our other special guest. She is currently pushing a body journal that she recently came out with. She's a body image and a love workshop professional, or expert, I should say. And right now she is planning her single moms retreat, which is going to be taking place on May 6th to the 8th. And yours truly has the pleasure of being on one of the panelists on one of the workshops during that retreat. So please, as I add them to the stream, I will ask that you give them a wave. Even we got another special guest with us as well. So I want y'all to give the wave, give a thumbs up. I forgot we have Miss Olympia, right? Olympia?
Yes, Olympia.
Yes, we have Miss Olympia, our very, very special guest. Welcome, ladies. How y'all doing tonight?
Good evening.
How's your Resurrection Sunday going?
It's going good for me. I've been hanging out with family all day, and as you can see, I have the little one here who's supposed to be sleeping, but she had her own plans today, so she's going to be our co-panelist tonight.
Mm-hmm. She's gonna keep you in line, keep mommy in line. That's her eyes are bright. She's not even thinking about going to sleep right now. Like it's risen. He is risen. I've risen too. I'm up.
Exactly.
Tanya, how has your day been, Tanya?
My day has been great. I was just relaxing and having dinner with family and just basically spending my day relaxing. It's been good. The weather here is beautiful, so it's been a great day.
Okay. Where you from, or where are you located?
I'm in Roanoke, Virginia. So that's like the southwestern part of Virginia, close to Tennessee, North Carolina.
So it's warm down there. Okay, nice. Yeah, the weather was kind of nice up here today too in Philly, but it was cold for most of the week, but it was nice today.
Yeah.
So, as you ladies know, that the conversation tonight is about communication repair. We're going to be talking about, just healthy and positive ways of communicating, and we're also going to be exploring some of the communication killers, some of the hardships of communication when we're in relationships, because we know if we ask anybody like what's some of the most important things when it comes to communication, when it comes to relationships, communication is going to be somewhere on that list. So I thought it was very important for us to talk about that. So I'm just going to kick off the conversation with the first question is, what would you describe as bad communication, and what would you describe as good communication? Tanya?
I would say that one form of bad communication is when we don't listen to understand and we only listen to respond. And we see that a lot with people because when we're interacting, especially if we're in a heated discussion with someone, a lot of times I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm not really listening to try to understand what you're saying. I'm just waiting for you to stop talking so that I can get my point across. And I think that's a really bad form of communication because I think many of us, one of our primary goals in any type of conversation is to be understood, or in any facet of life is to be understood. And so when you're in a situation where you don't feel like you're understood, and then when you're having a conversation with someone who's not trying to understand you, I believe that is a bad form of communication, because when we don't listen to understand, we miss a lot of important details that could really shift the conversation or bring context to a situation, because we're only focused on getting the last word, or we're only focused on, speaking our mind and saying what's on our heart instead of listening to what's actually taking place.
I absolutely agree, Tanya. I absolutely agree. I think that, just as you said, every human being has a desire to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood, just like you said. And I think that when we communicate, the intent is to convey information, right? But if you feel like that person is not hearing you, understanding you, or even seeing you, I think that we tend to actually get escalated. And that's where the poor communication comes in, because then we're doing things that are destructive, either to ourselves or to other people. And that is what kind of just throws out the relationship problems, right? And so I think that even if you can't meet someone's need, if you can at least, at the bare minimum, at least hear them, at least say, I hear you, I feel you, I understand you, that at the very minimum can help shift the whole narrative of the relationship and actually move you forward so that you're not stuck. And so I think that is what you said is so on point.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you guys. A lot of us don't often hear or realize that there's selfishness in communication. Sometimes we can just be focused on what we have to say or what we're feeling at the time or what we're trying to convey, whether it's an argument or whether it's just regular conversation. But it's so important to develop that skill of listening and help others realize that we are listening and we're understanding what they're saying, because that conveys appreciation. It conveys that, hey, I care about what you're saying, I care about you, and that you're important to me. When we totally ignore and just focus on the things that is important to us, we're kind of really alienating our loved ones, our mate, our significant others. So I agree with what both of you guys are saying. So when we identify the selfishness of communication, can can you identify some things that kills communication? What are some communication killers that you've seen or you experienced that immediately can destroy communication between two people?
I think one of the biggest things that I've seen destroy communication is a person's inability to know themselves so that they can identify what their values are, what their needs are, what their desires are, so that they can then communicate that to the next person, to the other person that they're in relationship with. Like, how can you, like, sometimes we have this assumption that people can read our minds, that people can just kind of figure out, that people can just do it. And I think that we really mess up when we kind of have that assumption that they can just know and we don't need to communicate. And I also think that we sometimes have this perception or this judgment that actually expressing a boundary or expressing a need is wrong. And I don't know where we get that from, but we think that if I say that I need this, then I'm being mean, or if I, assert a boundary, then I'm this. So you can assert whatever judgment you have there. But I think that that is one of the biggest things that kills communication is our identity and not knowing that we actually need to express this to another person. Like, say it with your words.
I agree with Ty. I totally agree with Ty. And I was actually going to say that point later in the conversation when we're talking about not making your needs known, not stating your needs. And just as you were saying, not knowing ourselves well enough to really know what we need, to really know what we are trying to voice. And when we don't make our needs known, and hey, women are good for this. We don't always speak up and make our needs known. And so we just assume that people should know. You should be able to know what we need. And it's like, okay, well, they don't know because you have not stated what your need is. And I also believe if you don't understand someone's communication language, that's also a killer too, because I remember a situation, I was working with a couple of individuals, and one person did not like this other person's demeanor, or attitude. She didn't feel like this person would speak or greet everyone the way she should when she came into their presence. And so she felt like, okay, if I drop subtle hints, then maybe she'll get the point. But see, this particular person doesn't communicate that way. You have to be direct with this person. So all the hint dropping, it missed completely because, okay, you're dropping these hints. I don't understand. What do you mean? But this person needed things stated directly. And so there was a miscommunication simply because the one person did not understand the other person's language of communication. And so you have to understand someone's language of communication and not just assume that the way you communicate is the way everybody communicates, because that is a very selfish position to have when you think that your way of understanding is the way everybody understands. Your way of communicating is the way everybody communicates. And so that is definitely a communication killer when you assume that everyone communicates the same way you do, and you don't take the time to learn their language, and when you don't state your needs.
Yeah,
that's a huge problem. I've run into a lot of people that like to drop hints, or they assume, and they don't realize, like, when we drop hints or assume, we leave room for so much interpretation. That's where a lot of miscommunication and misinterpretation happens. So it's so much better just to speak directly, especially what you ladies were saying about expressing like your needs. That's a part of self-care, like expressing your needs and telling people what you really need in a relationship. That's self-care and self-love, because we cannot assume that someone by osmosis or mental telepathy, that they're just going to know what we need in a relationship. But so many times people, I know I've done it, go into relationships assuming because a person is maybe a certain age or at a certain level in life or had a certain experience that they should know.
Right.
Everyone's experiences are different. That's why it's so important to express our needs.
And that's so good, because also I think, especially as you get older, you kind of tend to think that you kind of judge people by the experiences that you've had in the past. right? And so you kind of expect that, you know, all men are like this, all women are like this, they like it this way, they don't like it this way, instead of getting to know the person that you're in a relationship with and what their specific needs are. So really just don't assume anything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I also believe that, you know, going back to your point, I agree that sometimes we assume because of people's age or people's background that they won't understand or they won't be able to relate to certain aspects of life. But I firmly believe that all of us have something in common. You know, somewhere in our life, all of us have had a common experience. And so we can't assume that just because someone's older or younger that they won't understand, because they are of a certain race they won't understand, or because they grew up in a certain socioeconomic status that they won't understand. And so we do make those assumptions a lot, and we miss out on some valuable relationships and valuable communication simply because we've made assumptions up front without taking the time to really get to know and understand someone's background.
Yeah, very true. So speaking on communication killers, I was doing some reading, some research, and I came across this guy named John Gottman. I don't know if either one of you ever heard of him, but he speaks very intelligently about communication killers. And I wanted to kind of go over these communication killers that he identified that I wanted to share with those that are watching, because I believe that's a very teachable moment. One of the communication killers, he said, is being defensive. You know, when we perceive that someone is attacking us and we immediately come up with a counterattack or a counter complaint in order to defend ourselves. You know, so somebody, I'm in a relationship, my lady might say, hey, AB, you didn't take out the trash. I immediately say, hey, you didn't wash the dishes. You know, they're just, instead of maybe explaining what happened, why the trash wasn't taken out, I go into defense mode, and that'll kill communication right there. Absolutely. Another thing that he mentioned was contempt. Being in contempt is a communication killer. And what he meant by that is when we look down upon our mate, you know, when we speak to them maybe in a disrespectful manner, if we ridicule them, if we mock them, you know, if we I guess feel that we're higher than our mate, that can kill communication right there. Another thing he said was stonewalling, and I'll admit I've been pretty good at stonewalling when it comes to communication, and that's really just mentally and emotionally and sometimes even physically checking out of a conversation. Like if it's a conversation that I'm not uncomfortable with, don't want to have. In the past, I've been good at putting up that wall and just blocking it out. You know, I was silent, but it's not because I was listening, because I totally shut them out. And the fourth one that he said was criticizing our mate, like just any type of put downs, or, you know, instead of saying that, hey, this is a relational problem, something's going on between us, we focus it on our mate and say, hey, it's a problem with you. And that can kill communication right away. So I just thought those four things that he identified was so good, and I wanted to mention those things. But my next question, and we kind of got into it when you mentioned something about ladies, but my next question would be, why do you think it's so hard for men and women to communicate? What is the essence of that communication breakdown between us?
You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I think one of the reasons that we have a communication breakdown between men and women is because we don't understand each other's communication language. Women, we talk to process. This is how we process. We talk things out, and we're used to talking and then responding. Like if I talk to Ty, we're both women. If I say something, she's going to respond. If I say, then I'll respond to that, and then she'll respond to that. That's the kind of conversation that women have. And so we talk to process things, and men don't talk to process things the way we do. And so when we're speaking and men are not responding to what we're saying, we don't feel heard and we don't feel understood. We feel ignored. We feel like he's dismissing what I'm saying because he's not responding because I'm believing that he should respond to me the way my girlfriend should respond to me. You know, she's going to say something back and I'm going to respond to that and we're going to bounce off of each other. And men don't necessarily communicate that way. And so when we don't understand that, it's not wrong. It's the way God wired us. We just have two different ways of communicating, and it's the way God created us. So it's not wrong. You know, everything that he does is good, is perfect. And so the way he's created us to communicate is perfect for who we are. But we don't understand each other's form of communication. I would put most of that on the women, not really understanding men and how they communicate. And so because we don't understand how men truly communicate, we're expecting men to communicate as if they're one of our girlfriends. And so when they don't, we feel like, you know, something is wrong with that. But if we understood, okay, you know, I'm not being ignored. You know, he's just being very cerebral right now, and he's just trying to think about what I'm saying versus responding right away. You know, when we try to understand just those small things like that, it helps us to bring a lot of it into context. And so that we do understand, okay, as a man, this is how they process things. They process things differently than we do, but we talk and that's how we process. So.
That's so good. I love that. And I just would add that, you know, even more than man, woman, we have to think about how our brains are all created. You know, we have this brain and we can at any moment go into fight, flight, freeze, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the brain's way of just keeping us safe and alive and protected. And I think that sometimes what happens is that we don't recognize that, wait a minute, this person is in fight, flight, freeze. They're not even operating at the point where they can actually access the part of their brain that makes sense, that can actually think things through and actually solve problems. Like they are at the lowest part of their brain, just being really in their emotional brain. And I think that if we can ever get to the point where we can recognize when someone is in fight, flight, freeze and give them that space and create emotional safety for them, man or woman, I think that would be really helpful in helping us to actually have communication and move our relationships forward.
Hey man, I think that happens in conversation too. We go into fight or flight in conversation because if I feel like you're attacking me, then I'm either going to fight, I'm going to defend myself, or I'm going to shut the whole thing down and be like, all right, hang up, click, delete, whatever. I'm not going to talk. And so we use those fight or flight mechanisms even in our conversation. If I feel like you're attacking me, I'm immediately attacked. Now, the kind of person I am, I don't immediately respond if I feel like I'm being attacked. I'm the freeze person. I'm going to sit there and listen to what you're saying, and I'm going to be thinking about it and trying to process what you're saying without actually responding to you. And so, yeah, that's a very valid point. I love that example. That was an excellent example.
And you know what happens? What I tend to see is that we start to internalize the way that person. So we all have our own individual fight, flight, freeze reflex. Like we can't choose which one we use, right? So, but we tend to internalize the other person's chosen path that they use. So if I'm a fighter and you're a runner, like if you're running, I'm interpreting that as you don't like me, you don't want to talk things through, when really what's happening is you're trying to save yourself. If I am freezing, if I am, what's the other one, fight, flight? If I'm free, the other one.
Freeze, fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah, then you're interpreting that and as a attack against you. When it's not, it's literally you just trying to stay safe. You just trying to get yourself okay. And so what I tell people is that when you can recognize that that person is in fight, flight, freeze, that's not the time to talk. That is not the time to talk. That is the time to connect. That is the time to create emotional safety so that they can calm themselves down, so that they can access the part of their brain where you can actually solve a problem.
Yeah. And I really think a lot of it has to do with conditioning. A lot of it has to do with our experiences, the things that we're taught. I think men and women are probably taught differently when it comes to communication. We're conditioned differently when it comes to communication, whether it's through our family or through our environment or whatever it might be. I can speak from personal experience when it comes to family. Like I've always been, I guess, an individual that does not express his his feelings. In my past, I didn't express it the way I do now. I've gotten better, and this was a hard thing to do. It took a lot of training, a lot of practice. But I didn't come from a family that really communicated their feelings outwardly. You know, you knew you was loved because you was in school and you had food on the table and clothes on your back. There wasn't that many I love yous and hugs when you come through the door. So I didn't grow up in an environment where our emotions was expressed in that way. So when I got older and started entering relationships, that was a hard thing for me to do. You know, and it's still a little difficult, but now I'm aware of it. So I know I need to try harder. I need to put more effort into it. So I think a lot of it is conditioning, the environment we came from, the family that we was raised in. All of those things definitely have an influence on the way we communicate.
That's so true. That's so true. Like I know this couple that the one partner came from a family that was very critical, but that's how they showed love. Whereas the other partner, they were very nurturing and supportive. And so every time that one partner would criticize the one partner, the other partner was like, wait a minute, you don't even know how to show me love. Like you're not expressing love to me, but they were loving you the way that they knew how to love you. It just wasn't the way that you needed it. And so the only way that you can get through that is communication, knowing and having conversations about this is how I was raised. We crazy. But this is how we were raised. And this is when I say this, that is how I love you. And I need to know how to love you in a way that you can receive it. But I just don't know how to. And I love what you said, AB, is that it does take some vulnerability. It does take you saying, I'm sorry, this hurts me. When you do this, it hurts me because it makes me remember this and it makes me think of this. But sometimes we don't like to be vulnerable because it feels so uncomfortable.
That's very true. And I agree with AB because I came from an environment like that as well. I grew up in a household where we did not talk out feelings and there were no family meetings to discuss, well, how was your day and how are you doing? We didn't have that. You know, we knew we were loved, of course, but we didn't have those, those moments of sharing and things like that. And so as I grew up, I was not a very expressive person emotionally, verbally. I was not someone that would just share details of my life or my background because that's just not how we were raised, so I ended up being a very private person. And that was something that God had to help me break off of my life because I was like, look, I can't connect with people if I always stay closed in. And it's not because I have anything to hide. I'm just not used to that type of environment where people just openly shared stuff. I wasn't used to that. So that was something that I had to learn how to do. And even going back to your communication examples, the communication killer examples that you gave, the first one about being on the defense a lot, I came from a very hypercritical environment. Not my family, but just an environment that I was a part of was hypercritical. And so any type of critique that came across, I automatically assumed it was an attack. And so even though someone is trying to sit down and give me some constructive criticism, some tools to help me be better, I automatically assume you're cutting me down. You're criticizing me. So I would get defensive and I would have a defense already prepared. Well, this is the reason why it's like this. This is the reason why I did it this way, because I'm prepared to defend myself because I see your criticism as an attack and not as a tool, And so, and so that was also something that I had to get healed from, just that hypercritical environment. And then going from that to, being in a place where criticism was necessary for my growth and not being able to receive it as that because all I know was, like you were saying, critique. That's all I knew. And it wasn't critique to help me. It was critique to just basically judge me. And so, that was something that I had to get healed from as well. So.
I love that. And don't you think that when you're in relationship with people, knowing that we all are in process helps the relationship because we are in a generation of strong cutoff game. Like we will cut people off. We will say peace, and that's just the mentality that we have now. We are not a generation that wants to work with people on their wholeness journey. And, you know, there's a lot of debate that goes back and forth, like how much do I take, right? But I do know that if you're going to be committed in a relationship, you do have to work with someone and understand their background and kind of bear with some of that process that they go through in terms of unlearning what they've learned in the past. That's just my point of view, though.
I agree.
Yeah. The scary thing is that we often don't even take out the time to explore those things. Like if someone, say if I was in a relationship with Tanya and I give her some, you know, some advice on something, and if she was defensive, I probably wouldn't have taken out the time to kind of explore where that come from. Why did you respond like that? Immediately, my defenses will come up. And that's what happened in relationships a lot. Like we don't take out the time to understand why someone communicates the way they do. We just respond or we become defensive. And then that starts the breakdown of a relationship. And then we end up in that negative cycle of communication where I'm defensive, she's defensive, she says something, I withdraw. And then, you know, before you know, we don't know how to get out that cycle. So that's actually my next question. Like when people are stuck in that cycle of negative communication where the defensive is up or just constantly criticizing or the person always withdraws and two people can never really communicate in a healthy way, what would be some advice or what would be some steps that you would tell someone as far as getting out of that cycle and changing the way to communicate?
Yeah, I always start with awareness. Like, I think that once you are aware that this is a dynamic that we have, so just being honest to build the awareness that this is a dynamic that we have that exists in our relationship, and then being willing to change the cycle. So I look at relationships as systems. And sometimes when we are in a system, we think that only one part of the system is the root cause of everything, right? But no, it takes all parts of the system to make a system function and operate. So in terms of breaking the cycle, we have to look at, okay, what is my part in it? What is my part? What's your part? And how do we help one another to be more healthy? And I think that just being honest and open and willing to change and willing, because sometimes we think change is like really easy, but change is hard. Like our brain fights us to change. So being willing to actually fight against your own brain, what's actually comfortable to you, to break the cycles, to me, being willing to do that is the starting place.
I agree, Ty. And I also agree, just going back to your point about awareness, not only should we be aware, but we need to be aware that it's unhealthy, because a lot of us are aware that we have some character flaws, but we've learned to justify them. We've learned to accept that we have these character flaws. If I'm a hypercritical person, I know I'm hypercritical, but this is just who I am, and I've accepted that. And so getting to that place of saying, not only do I realize that I'm overly critical, but that it's very unhealthy. You know, and understanding that that's the problem with me being overly critical, is the fact that it's very unhealthy, not only for myself, but it's unhealthy for those that I'm in relationship with. And so when we get to that place of recognizing it's unhealthy and then exploring, okay, well, where did this come from? We need to do a little, background. Where did this come from? Did I grow up in this environment? Did something happen to me? Or did I experience something that caused me to become this way? Like, where did that come from? Because a lot of our communication issues do come from past traumas and things that we've experienced. If we shut down, it may be because of a past trauma that caused us to, want to protect ourselves by not saying anything. Sometimes people don't speak up and state their needs because it's just safer to not say anything. It's just safer to, be quiet, just keep my mouth shut, do what I need to do, because we go into that survival mode. And if I'm going to survive this situation, I need to just shut up and be quiet. versus speaking up and stating my needs. And while, being quiet in and of itself is not a bad thing, when you're quiet in critical situations where you need to speak up, when you need to make your voice heard, and when you need to get your message across, but yet you choose to be silent, then that is something that, that needs to be corrected and to be recognized first as being unhealthy, and then to figure out, okay, well, why am I like this? Because sometimes some of the traumas that have taken place in our life happened so long ago that over the years we've suppressed those things. And now 20 years later, we are a certain way, or we communicate a certain way, and we don't even recall. We've been that way for so long, we don't even recall what happened that made us that way. And so we have to go back to that place of, okay, well, what happened in my life that caused me to become a person? I used to speak up for myself, and now I don't. Now I let everybody run over me. Now I just, keep my head down and just avoid any type of confrontation. So what happened in my life that caused me to become that way if I wasn't always like that? And so, yeah, it's definitely important to go back to, past events in our lives to see at what point did I become the way that I am? At what point did I start communicating the way that I do?
That's so good. And I love that. And taking it another step further, like when you're in the moment and you're finding yourself like really triggered by something that's happening, like pausing. Like sometimes we think that we have to just respond and react like right away. Like practice pausing. Like practice just calming yourself all the way down so that you can really get clear on what is going on in this moment. Am I thinking clearly? Did they say, like, did I hear what they exactly said? And if I'm not clear on it, asking them, saying, look, this is what you said, this is how I interpreted it. Mm-hmm. And I need to check in with you to make sure that I'm hearing you right. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not hearing you right, tell me what you mean. Mm-hmm. Like, it's okay to ask questions. Like, I think that sometimes we just don't want to ask those types of questions. We think they may look at us funny, but yeah, ask questions and slow yourself down enough to recognize what is actually going on. What am I hearing? What am I thinking? Do I need to change my thinking? Am I looking at this in the wrong way? Did I put something in this conversation that wasn't even said? All of that is really helpful.
It is.
Yeah, that's some very important things that both of you ladies said, especially the awareness and just realizing that it's unhealthy, trying to get out that cycle. And, sometimes I think that's why it's so important to seek outside help sometimes, because when you're stuck in that cycle, it can be difficult to pause because, it becomes habit. It becomes impulsive, if after you've communicated in a way for so many years, for so long, you don't even realize that you're in a cycle that you need someone from the outside looking at your relationship, looking at your style of communication and saying, hey, this is what you do, this is what he does, and then you do this, and then it just becomes a cycle, and this is where you guys need to break the cycle. And I think so even after the awareness and realizing it's unhealthy, it's so important, if you can't break it by yourself, to find somebody, a counselor or somebody to help you break that cycle, because it can be a hard thing to do when you're stuck in it. I think that's the importance of therapy and counseling and mentorship and things of that nature.
Super.
I see Alethea is sleeping. I'm hoping I'm boring her. I don't know if that's a good sign. I was worried. You knocked out. That's good. So I'm gonna try something with the two of you ladies that I don't do too much on this broadcast. I'm gonna speak about a situation, and I want you to kind of pick out where a couple went wrong with the communication, and possibly where they could have fixed it, or where they could have broken the cycle or done something different. So I'm gonna change the names. This is a real life situation, but I changed it around a little bit, to protect the innocent. So here's the situation, and if those that are watching or those are viewing, if you have any input, please type it in. So we have a wife that comes home from work, a hard day work. Husband was home. He worked from home on this particular day. He was with the kids. When wife came home, she saw that, the house wasn't clean. There was no dinner. And she immediately got to working, cleaning, trying to fix something to eat. And in the midst of that, she asked her husband to take out the trash. He responded by saying, "Hey, 1 minute, let me send this last email and I'll take it out." She became frustrated. Her frustration elevated because she was already frustrated, and she decided to take out the trash. And she told him, "You never do anything I ask you to do." And he immediately withdrew because of that. She decided to journey upstairs, go to sleep, and to avoid an argument or a confrontation, he stayed downstairs a little bit longer, fell asleep on the couch, and the situation never got rectified. As you hear that situation, as you hear that interaction, where can you see that this couple went wrong with the communication, and what would you suggest to them?
So I always listen for those really strong nevers, shoulds, coulds, betters. Like I always listen for those, because when we start to say this person never does something, like really, like they never do something ever. So I like to look at that am I being realistic here? Or is this what I like to call it, just a really high risk situation where I was already maybe frustrated and maybe I needed more support, and maybe I needed to just communicate in that moment that I need help, and recognize that, you know what, my partner is not my enemy. My partner is here to support me. But if I need that support, it's my responsibility to directly ask for it. And I think that is what I hear. I hear the never, and I hear the lapse in actual verbal communication about what you actually need.
Mm-hmm. We'll go back to the needs that both of you were speaking about earlier. Mm-hmm. Tanya, what do you think?
I agree. I totally agree with Ty. She didn't state her needs. She assumed that he was going to know to take out the trash, to do these different things. And I think also too, because he did not really, because us as women, he did not ask her, how are you doing? How was your day? Did you have a good day? He didn't ask her questions that made her feel seen or special or heard in any way. He just, as soon as she came home, it was like, did you pick up dinner? And she's like, you don't know, like maybe she had a rough day at work, a terrible day at work. And she is just like happy to get up out of there and to be home with her family. And then after all that she's gone through that day, the first thing she's greeted with when she comes home is, did you pick up anything for dinner? Mm-hmm. And so, that in itself, I think that's probably the thing that set off the rest of it right there, was the fact that, you come home and you don't even greet me when I walk through the door, and in his mind, he's just preoccupied probably with other things, with the child, with the job, email, and all this other stuff, that he's not even thinking about all of that. He's just got his mind on other things. And so, I think because she felt like she was just not even seen in that moment, I think that that's probably the thing that set things in motion rather. And then, as Ty said, not stating her needs and what she would like to have had done. Maybe she could have contacted him at some point during the day and said, hey, do you mind taking out the trash? Or, hey, I'm not going to have time to stop anywhere after work to pick up something to eat. Can you run out and grab something? Things like that could have helped to mitigate some of that discord, between them, some things that could have, but, some of those things, stating your needs is very, very important. And she didn't do that. Maybe she didn't have time to do that. And then not talking out the situation. Her, again, even after that, she still, could have sat down and explained to him, where she was, how she was feeling, and what she needed in that moment. But she chose to, go to sleep and just say, you know what? Never mind. Never mind. I'm not going to even say anything else. And then he could have spoken up as well, I believe, and, I think both parties, either one of them could have stepped up to say, what they needed, or to ask, what was needed, or, to kind of get some type of idea of what's going on. Where's the miscommunication coming from between us? But they both chose to, not address it, to not confront it. And so,
yeah. And you know what else? I think that sometimes we, in relationships, romantic or non-romantic, we take connection for granted. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes you can say anything to anybody if you are connected with them and they feel strongly attached to you, right? Mm-hmm. And so if her love tank was already full before she came home, and even if today was a challenging day, if she was already connected and they were already closely knit, I think that maybe she wouldn't have had that type of reaction. And so not taking connection overall for granted can really sometimes help with even communication.
Yeah. All those things that you both mentioned are so important when it comes to developing positive and healthy communication. Like, we have to express our needs, and we have to listen to our mate's needs. And the being seen part, like that goes hand in hand with feeling understood. Like, if you're in a relationship and you feel misunderstood, or you feel like you're not even seen by your mate, like, that's a very terrible situation or feeling or position to be in. So those things are very needed when it comes to communication. And you're right, the withdrawal that they both did, the putting up the defenses and speaking in absolutes, that you never, that's definitely a communication killer right there. So just to wrap up the conversation, give me, I get 3 or 5 things that you would say, or 3 or 5 keys to positive and healthy communication. What can a couple do? What can a person do to help ensure, or at least strengthen their communication when it comes to relationships?
You want to go first?
Sure. Sure, I'll go. I think the first thing, and I had mentioned this earlier, is don't assume everyone communicates the same way you do. Don't assume that the way you understand is the way everyone understands, that the way you communicate and speak is the way everyone communicates. The way you react or respond is the way everyone reacts and responds. And I think not being so presumptuous, not being so prideful in believing that, the way you function in life is the way that everyone should function in life. Understanding how people communicate, learning, being willing to learn how other people communicate, so that you can have an idea of how to frame certain things and how to approach certain things with people. So, because I understand how that person communicates. I actually gave an example of this on my page the other night when I was talking about how do I communicate with my friends who deal with anxiety issues. I don't give them cliffhangers. I don't tell them I need to talk to you later. I don't tell them I got something to tell you. I don't tell them, we need to talk and leave it hanging like that, because I know that with a person with anxiety, now for me, I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll talk to you later. But for a person that deals with a lot of anxiety, this causes abnormal stress reactions to take place in their body, and it's going to put them in this mode of fear and anxiety for the rest of the day, trying to figure out what in the world does she have to talk to me about? Did I do this? Did I do that? You're searching your mind. You're searching, all these different things. You're trying to look over your texts and emails. Did I say something? Did I, what's going on? And so it does not work for everyone. So when I know I'm dealing with someone who has anxiety issues and is overly anxious, I know that whatever I need to talk to them about, I need to talk to them about it right then and there. To calm any type of anxiety, I need to go ahead and talk to them about what's on my mind. But see, a person like me doesn't need that. But what if I handled a person like that the way I handle myself? If you told me you need to talk to me later, okay, well, call me later. That's fine. But for someone that's dealing with those types of anxiety issues, that's not going to work well for them. That's not going to work for them. So when I learn how other people communicate, how they respond, and how they their best language of communication, then, I think we can greatly benefit from that, because then it shows empathy, because I'm communicating with you from a place of trying to understand how you feel, trying to put myself in your position and know what it sounds like on your end versus just focusing on what it sounds like on my end. That's one point. And then I would just follow up with also, being a good listener, focusing on learning how to be a good listener, not just speaking, but listening, because everything does not warrant an immediate response. Everything does not need a response. Sometimes someone wants to talk to me because they just need my listening ear. They don't need me to solve their problem for them. They don't need me to critique. They don't need me to, try to step in and be their hero or any of that stuff. They just really need me to listen. I try to limit adding my personal experiences. It's good to add personal experiences to a conversation so you can connect with that person, but don't, try to take over the conversation by just talking about your background, your history and stuff. This person needs your ear right now. And so we have to get to a place where we intentionally listen to people. Like, I want to listen to you. Like, I don't know what's going on. And, I don't care about what's going on in my life right now. Now it's about you. It's your time. So, say whatever is on your heart. This is your time. I'm making this time for you. It's not about me. I think that's another great point also to keep in mind as well. I'm sorry.
I only have really one extra one because you kind of set them all. But the only thing that I would add is to, again, we talked about this earlier today, but not internalizing other people's stuff. And then along with that is realizing that everyone has an experience that is their own, that is going to be different from yours. And you may not agree with their experience, their interpretation, the way they see it, the way they feel it, but it's still theirs. It's still very real. It's still very valid to them. So just because you acknowledge their experience doesn't mean that you agree. It just means that I feel you. I understand you. This is your experience. Help me to understand it more. If you don't understand it, help me to understand it more. So I think that goes a long way when you're able to just validate someone's experience and not internalize it as an attack against you or saying that they're wrong for having their experience. Because sometimes that happens a lot, because I might say, okay, it's cold, right? You might say, no, it's hot, but I'm cold. Acknowledge that I'm cold and give me a jacket, right? That's what I need from you. I need you to just share that space with me, meet my needs, at least acknowledge my needs, and then we're good. And I think that goes a long way with communication, and especially in relationships.
Yeah. Some good stuff, some great advice. I thank you, ladies, for your insight, for your perspective, your wisdom, for your experience. I'm sure those that are watching have definitely learned and picked some stuff up. I hope they was taking notes. I know I was over here taking some notes. So real quickly, I'm going to go to a quick commercial break from our sponsors. And when we come back, I would like you guys to share where people can find you, where they can follow you, and all that good stuff. We'll be back in about 30 to 40 seconds.
We often measure our relationship readiness by external factors. The degrees, the career, the dream house. Even though these things are great to have, it's usually the internal things that really determine if we are truly ready for a happy and healthy relationship. Are we healed from past hurt? Have we strengthened ourselves spiritually? Do we know who we are as a person? Do we have a mutuality mindset? Ready for a Relationship, the self-growth guide to internal readiness, addresses all of these questions. For more information, go to www.readyforrelationship.com.
Okay, so as you know, this whole broadcast was inspired by a book that I wrote called Ready for Relationships. And in this book, I talk about different topics like communication. And this is just one of the many topics in that book. So please go to the website, www.readyforrelationship.com, and support. You can also pick up my other book, From Relational Hurt to Spiritual Healing. But Ty, please tell the people where they can meet, where they can find you, where they can follow you, all that good stuff.
Well, I'm on Facebook, of course, under my name, Tanya Coles. I'm on Facebook, but my trauma organization also has a page. It's called Emerge Trauma Wellness, and you can find us on Facebook and follow. I put all of my events there. I also share nuggets, trauma related nuggets, things that can help with healing, things that can help with learning more about trauma, identifying different types of trauma, different behaviors associated with trauma, and all of those things. And so you can find all of that information on that page. And then I'm also on Instagram as well. And you can find me under my name on Instagram too. So those are the 2 platforms that I'm on. So.
And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. It's Rehabilitate Your Life on Instagram and Facebook. And if you wanted to check out the website, it is www.rehabilitateyourlife.com.
Okay. Does Olympia want to say anything? We're gonna let her sleep. We're gonna let her sleep. Ladies, I cannot say thank you enough. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules and sitting down with me on this Resurrection Sunday evening and having this great conversation. I want to thank everybody that was logged on, that was watching. You can watch the replay on YouTube at Ready for Relationship Consulting. And please follow the ladies. If you have any questions, you can ask questions. We'll be responding. And so watch the replay, and we'll even respond to the replay. So I just want to say good night, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. You can go put the baby to bed. You can go lay her down, and and you guys have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.